Thanks for joining us today, Rachel, and good morning, everyone. It's been a pleasure seeing you guys again on our fifth 100X, and it's always great to start the day with the stakeholder that play a very important role in accelerating energy transition. So it's a real pleasure. And Rachel, you've been with the CPUC for quite some time, right? 2011. So you've seen probably a lot of changes that happened. Maybe could you walk us through how the energy landscape has shaped up for the state of California during this period of time?
Absolutely, Tina. First, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Adam, for the invitation, and thank you all for the chance to be here today, and great to chat with you, Tina. I did bring a set of slides. I know I made Tina nervous with the set of slides, but it's important for me to provide a little bit of context because we are a government entity and we are the regulator of so many entities here in California. So these are available for anyone who'd like to request them afterwards. But I just want to start by noting, as Adam said, we are the regulatory agency for a number of industries in California. They're listed here on this slide. And really, I think of us as setting the policy and the rules for the services that are essential to modern life in California.
So yeah, you mentioned it's a very broad responsibility, right? Not just electricity, it's all water, telecom, and so on.
That's right.
How big is the workforce at CPUC at the moment?
We are 1,600 people.
1,600.
Yeah, we are statewide in California and have offices here, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. When we get to the slide, we have 5 commissioners who are appointed first by the governor and then have to be confirmed by the California State Senate. So these are folks who have expertise in any one or more of the industries that we regulate. I always need to say the president of the commission, who's Alice Reynolds, she's my direct boss, and I always need to say when I'm speaking that I do bring greetings from her as the president of the commission. So when we get the slides up, you're going to see a great divergence trend line because in California, pollution is down and GDP is up. We are the 4th largest economy in the world, and we are powering that economy through mostly clean energy. We were powered by 2/3 clean energy in 2023, and this year the grid has operated on renewable energy for at least part of every single day. We've added 25,000 megawatts of new clean energy resources to the grid, including more than 15,000 megawatts of battery storage and energy storage, which we'll talk about more, plus our forecasted new resources coming online, which we're at the forefront of planning and ordering procurement for, are 100% clean between now and 2045. The reason that we are so advanced and pushing really hard in this space is because California has a clean energy goal of reducing our 1990 emissions levels below 85%, below those levels by 2045, which effectively means that the entire economy needs to be functioning on clean energy by that time. Okay, so rapid through some of these slides. There's our commission and our mission. There are the 5 commissioners I mentioned. And then here's the trend line trajectory. So we are on track to cut GHG emissions to 85% below 1990 levels by 2045. And that's really the driving goal that's going to inform so much of what you and I talk about, Tina.
That is amazing. But there are also the new boss in town, which is called Gen AI, right? That is starting to, for the first time in a decade, increasing the U.S. energy consumption. So how does CPUC is planning to deal with a huge projected increase in the demand and what that might mean for the state?
Absolutely. We do like to think of them as a partner. So all of you who are both working with data centers and partnering or maybe working for data center development, California does welcome you here. We want you to share in the renewable energy future or the present that we've already built. I included this slide about our energy leadership because I wanted to show you the number of government agencies that are part of making sure that the grid can be ready for the dramatic new load. You're right, Tina, the load increase is quite significant. From Pacific Gas and Electric, we know that they're seeing interest in 13 gigawatts of new data center load alone over the next 10 years. And that's just data centers. It doesn't count the new housing, industry, manufacturing, schools, hospitals, et cetera, that we also want to build. So we are welcoming it. We want it to share in the grid and be part of the grid. And one of the reasons for that is that the grid is an enormous fixed cost that all of our ratepayers are paying for right now. A data center or any other large load is equivalent. It's a new customer, and we want it to attach and connect to the grid and be part of, bring that capacity to California's economy, and then also share in the fixed cost of the grid. It definitely is introducing some planning complexity to us because the location of where a data center or another large load user needs to locate is a very consequential. If it's in a metropolitan area such as the Bay Area, Los Angeles, it's very possible that the grid is ready to receive that new load without significant upgrade. But if the best location per what the customer wants is in a less developed location, then it can trigger significant upgrades. So we're taking a very practical approach to this. We've ordered the utilities to establish transparent energization timelines. We've got bridge-to-wire solutions going on when the grid isn't quite ready for what the customer needs. We have seen that some uses are getting installed and interconnected within weeks, like EV fast charging stations. And then two of the major utilities here have customer tracking portals up. Those links are to PG&E and Southern California Edison. I included the next slide. I'm not going to talk about it, but just in case anyone is in the middle of one of these interconnection processes right now, we have a set of steps and responsibilities that you can reference as far as what you can expect from the utility.
And I saw a lot of people having their camera out. So if you want the full slide, we'll make it available as well. So just let us know. Yeah. So thank you for preparing this very comprehensive information for us to take away. And what do you think about the new type of energy that's coming into play that would provide clean, firm power? I think we're talking like geothermal, nuclear SMR, and fusion, and those kind of things. I mean, California has been really leading in terms of renewable and energy storage, but within the innovation community, we also see alternative clean, firm as well.
Absolutely, yes. And this is where I enjoyed talking with Adam in last year at the Department of Energy. I'm just going to go back to our new resources online slide. So California is a complicated marketplace for energy planning and procurement. The CPUC issues procurement orders that are modeled to solve for clean energy to achieve our emissions reduction target, reliability, keeping the lights on, and least cost. So we're really trying to find that Venn diagram central part of those three indicators. There are 46 entities in California that include utilities, community choice aggregators, and energy service providers who are out there procuring energy pursuant to our procurement orders. 46 is a lot of entities, and I imagine that anyone here who might be developing a project might feel like that's kind of too many potential buyers to go to, especially if your project has a larger off-take than what they themselves require. So what has happened is that the legislature and the governor have recognized that sometimes in the midst of what's really a robust marketplace, the government sometimes does still need to step in order to say there is a need for a centralized procurement function. California does need some of these larger, long lead time resources, and we're going to authorize one entity to procure on behalf of everyone else. That happened in 2024 when we issued a procurement order for 1 gigawatt of long-duration energy storage that is at least 12 hours in duration, another gigawatt of long-duration energy storage that's multi-day, 1 gigawatt of geothermal, and 7.6 gigawatts of offshore wind. Those are what we can see looking ahead to 2045 as the larger resources that California needs to achieve that trifecta of emissions reduction, reliability, and least cost. Those are very large, presently expensive resources, but we're hoping that by sending that procurement signal out, that members of those industries are sharpening their pencils, working to bring the costs down in order to bid competitively starting in 2026. Southern California Edison is the entity that is going to be conducting this procurement on behalf of California, and so anyone who's in this space and wants to start preparing, that's what you should be on the lookout for.
All right, so that's great to know. So we're talking about the load growth and the need to bring more energy source. How do we think about the grid orchestration and resiliency in this case, Rachel? I think we've seen a lot of startups trying to use new tools, even Gen AI for the grids. And are these some of the area that could help with the states in terms of like ensuring the grid's traffic and things like that?
I believe that dozens of companies are already helping with that. So the answer to that is a resounding yes. We are requiring the utilities in California to operate their system safely and reliably. They are the owners and operators of their distribution systems and transmission systems. So their job is to constantly go out to the marketplace, issue RFIs or RFPs for technology that can help them do that. My understanding is there's a large amount of innovation in this area, in particular because California faces such existential wildfire risk. And so the utilities are constantly looking for modeling and technology solutions that help them manage their grid to reduce the risk of their equipment igniting a wildfire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think talking about the climate risk, it fit very well into our panel agenda later in the day because while there's a goal for the state to drive toward the renewable energy 2045, right? I think the rate of the global warming is actually accelerating. And I want to ask, does the CPUC have any particular mandate to try to ensure the utility operates safely, preventing wildfire and whatnot?
Yes, I mean, that's in the law as well, that our job is to regulate the utilities so that they deliver safe, reliable service to Californians. We are hard at work in California in managing that risk because the utilities, when their equipment does ignite a wildfire and they are found to have not managed their system prudently, they face quite extensive liability. But so we've taken an all-fronts approach in California to make sure that the utilities are doing their part to reduce that risk. One major kind of headwind that we're facing is the fact of how expensive that is right now. At the moment, when I pay my PG&E bill every month, about 14% of what I'm paying is going to that wildfire risk reduction. And the numbers are similar for Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric. And so to all you innovators in the audience, we are absolutely looking for ways for you to bring technology solutions that help bring that wildfire risk reduction cost down for California. Because as you said, climate change is only accelerating. The impacts are only accelerating here. And every season, every year is a full season of wildfire for us.
That is scary. And another equation, another part of the equation when we are talking about adapting to the climate change, I think it's water. Water is 75% of the surface of the earth. And with climate change, sometimes you get too much water, sometimes you get like flooding, sometimes you get droughts. How does the commissioner prepare to deal with the impact of climate change on water resources?
It's a great question. And I mean, just mentioning droughts, one of the reasons we have such extensive wildfire risk in California is because the years 2010 to about 2020, we went through a mega drought here, and millions of trees died and are still vulnerable to catching fire. But water is, you're right, a precious resource. We're seeing a change in weather patterns that's causing our snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas to melt on different time frames every year. And so California depends on that as part of its water supply. But when the melting pattern changes, that affects the supply for the water utilities that are serving California. We're responsible for the privately owned, investor-owned water utilities, not the municipal ones. Mm-hmm. So we regulate about a third of the suppliers to California customers. And it is true, we are overseeing them maintaining a reliable supply of water, which is getting more and more challenging. There is one of the regulated utilities in California called CalAM, California American Water. They are building a desalination plant on the Monterey Peninsula because they are no longer permitted to draw water from the Carmel River, which was their water supply for years. The river has been affected by drought and seawater intrusion, and so they're banned from drawing water out of it. And in order to find that supply for their customers, they're building a desalination plant in Monterey.
In Monterey, mm-hmm. Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And we talk about a lot of startups that are developing new technologies to solve all these decarbonization, new energy, and climate resiliencies. And a lot of time they have to go work with utilities. And what we often heard is that the duration that they need to go through to get the process developed, it takes a long time. So is there any incentive or advocacy that CPUC is helping to maybe accelerate the timeline for adoption and things like that? I mean, you probably have a lot of things to consider, but would like to hear your take on this.
Sure. You're asking a government person about timelines. We do everything we can to be nimble ourselves, and we do everything we can to press the utilities that we regulate to be nimble as well. I actually think the energization timelines is a good example of that. We saw a problem, we figured out some good, transparent ways to solve it, and there is a real-world result. At the same time, I absolutely know that the timelines that you work on are different from the timelines that a utility and a government agency work on. Sometimes that actually runs to everyone's benefit, because if we are steady, not necessarily lightning fast, but we're steady and transparent, that does allow the marketplace to evolve. So for example, us saying that a procurement RFP is going out in 2027, I would hope allows people who are looking at commercializing some of their larger resources plenty of time to prepare and know that something is coming from the government and the utility. The utilities operate on a variety of timelines. One of the major ones is that every 4 years, they present to us a general rate case, and we approve essentially a work plan for them for the next 4 years. So every time the commission finishes one of those cases, then the utility has its budget and its approved work program for the next 4 years. And that's kind of a moment when they're saying to the private sector, hey, we're authorized to acquire new tools and new resources. Please come in and show us what you can do.
transportation, I think, is one other topic that we have not talked about. Right now, I think it's great to see EV has been widely adopted in the state of California as well, right? But at the same time, I think the macro for investor community is a little bit down, a little bit on the EV. And do you have sort of like the outlook on what CPUC might do to accelerate the transition on the transportation sector?
Yes, that gives me a chance to hop to my last slide. Thank you. So here, what we put on is the kind of the economy-wide look at where California is looking to meet our 2045 goal. So these are all the sectors across which different agencies, including the CPUC and multiple other agencies, are taking action and looking to really drive towards 2045. So electrifying the transportation sector is a major track within what we're all trying to do. The CPUC has a swim lane there in which we're receiving utility applications for where they might build certain charging stations or where they might participate in helping some of the medium duty and heavy duty transportation to electrify, which is part of what will achieve the greatest bang for the buck in terms of pollution and emissions reduction in California. So for us, it's always a question of, is the utility proposing to make an investment that ultimately is good for ratepayers? Because ratepayers, again, are going to pay for that CapEx over the long haul. So where they can show that an investment will have ratepayer benefit and emissions reduction benefit, we're likely to look on that as a favorable application. There are other agencies, especially the Air Resources Board in California, that are very active in the arena of electrifying transportation or providing that infrastructure on a much broader basis. So all of us who buy an electric vehicle can find more and more charging stations around California. It's definitely a complicated area because you're looking at kind of micro infrastructure and macro infrastructure at the same time. But there is a lot of activity in California going on in that area.
Amazing. So I think my final question, looking through the lens of 100X and great entrepreneurs and investors in the room, is there any parting thought that you want to call for action to the people in the room of how we might be able to help accelerate the goal toward the 2045?
Yeah. Well, I loved hearing Nicola's articulation of what sounds like your company values of the code. I love that. I use that at the CPUC all the time. It's a way to bring a very diverse team together in thinking about for our part, what are we doing? How are we helping California? How are we working to achieve this 2045 goal? I hope that California is presenting itself to all of you as a place that is open for business, interested in your innovation, really looking to invest long term in both our economic sector, our private sector, but also in the people and the communities that live and work in California. So I hope that you're looking to create jobs here. I hope you're finding good sites for your companies. I hope you're finding welcoming government representatives as you go about your business. And please know that we feel on the government side that we're all in this together. There's no way that we alone can achieve what we have set out to do here, along with bringing our communities along and making sure that our state is a happy and healthy place. So we are absolutely ready to partner with all of you in the room, and I hope you find a good spot to do business in California.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
And I think we have time for some questions. Yeah, I think we have 5 minutes for Q&A. So.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm Norman from UMC Capital. So we are Taiwanese semiconductor foundry. We're number 2 in the world in terms of pure foundry play. So we consume gigawatt hour per year. So great topic. I saw you have the chart on solar, wind. What's hybrid?
That tends to be an intermittent resource plus storage.
Okay, intermittent.
That's what we mean by hybrid at this point.
And my second question is, I think this really depends on the geography. Like California is like a sunshine state. Well, Florida, I always say that, but I think California has a lot of sunshine. But yeah, so that chart totally makes sense. But in Taiwan, we get rainy season and stuff. But we do solar, of course, it's renewable energy. Have you seen set up in a solar, whatever the park, solar field, that is in combination with other kind of renewable energy source that you're using? Or a solar is just pure solar, storage and another storage, or you have start to see solar at the top and then something at the bottom, and both are doing their stuff for renewable storage. Thank you.
Yes, it's absolutely happening that storage is being paired with both wind and solar resources. And that's because the storage can make those resources so much more effective. The solar or wind plant might have been built 10 or 15 years ago when there wasn't as much storage available to add to their system. But now that it's much more available, in part, again, because we issued a major procurement order for storage about 10 years ago, but now that it's so much more available and it's not always cost effective, but definitely the costs are coming down, they're adding it in.
Thank you for the wonderful discussion. My question was, as an investor, you showed the energy leadership and the various organizations within the CPUC, but I'm wondering kind of what is the best way as an investor, I guess, if we have an interesting portfolio company, what would you suggest as kind of the entry point with which we can start communicating with your commission?
It's a great question. So the CPUC works through public decision-making processes. And so where we have that green box in the middle that says integrated resource planning, we have an entire proceeding with literally hundreds of stakeholders participating who are constantly vetting our model and our procurement orders in order to themselves kick the tires on what is reliable, achieves the greenhouse gas emissions reduction that we want to achieve, and is least cost. It is resource intensive to participate in one of our proceedings. There are resource advocates who do participate. So there's a solar association, wind association, storage association, and some individual companies participate. That's definitely one way to join in the policy level conversation about what's happening in energy planning and procurement in California. And you're absolutely welcome to do it. I only say it's resource intensive because it is resource intensive. Any one of our decisions is 150 pages long and has, dozens of exhibits flowing into it. The other place to really connect is at the bottom of the slide are the load serving entities. Those are the ones that have to actually go and sign PPAs to obtain the resources that we've ordered them to obtain. So that's another really good connection point. The California ISO, which is right below us and above the utilities, is the grid operator for California. And I neglected to say this when we were talking, Tina. They are also always in the innovation market. They're always also looking for new and better technologies to manage and balance California's grid. We're on the pathway to building a West-wide electric grid and an interconnected electric grid as well. And so that offers an enormous opportunity, I think, for folks to participate in that expansion of California being connected to all the Western states.
Charles Cadieux, co-founder of Spiritus, and we've seen just a huge rush for natural gas power generation, especially related to like data centers. And I noticed, on the graph of future generation sources, of course, natural gas is out there. Looks like kind of in perpetuity. I was just curious to know what the perspective is on carbon capture and storage, because we're just seeing that as a particularly viable option there to help with those intermittent energy deployment issues, and also just having diversification in terms of the energy sources as well. So just curious about the perspective there.
The graph shows that what we set up for natural gas in California is what we call a strategic reliability reserve. There are a certain number of plants run by natural gas that we know we need for this interim period as we're still transitioning towards 2045. There's no new gas plants being built, but we know that we're keeping those few ready to serve, and they're really only serving at the peak load hours during the summer. So that's why that shows that it's present through this goes to 2029. In fact, my team sent me an interesting piece on carbon capture and storage. I think it's one of those technologies that needs to really come to demonstration in locations. I believe that they are starting to demonstrate their viability in other parts of the world. I would love to see it in California. I think it's on everyone's minds, but we haven't seen a viable demonstration of it yet. But I believe that especially the Air Resources Board, which is responsible for our air quality controls, is really looking at that as a hoped-for technology to introduce here.
Thanks for the great talk, Carly Anderson, Timescale Ventures. I was having a conversation last night with a company we support who is trying to get an interconnection request in California to build a factory. And they basically put in 4 $30,000 applications for 4 different sites. They're going to build one site, but they don't know which one's going to come through first. And especially looking at that chart, that's a huge challenge if you're going between the CPUC and PG&E and CAISO to get that transmission system all worked out. I know that it's a lot of work on the engineer's part to do those studies. I'm curious what initiatives are underway, if any, to streamline that process. And is it a staffing thing? Is it a technology thing? Is it a resource thing? Like, how are you guys thinking about that problem?
Yeah. So interconnecting at the transmission level is a CAISO responsibility in the first place. That's the California Independent System Operator. And so they're the ones, folks are looking to interconnect with large load applications and large generation applications. And the California ISO is in constant iteration of its interconnection process. I think the answer to your question is kind of all of the above. It's an infrastructure problem, staffing, engineering, and really wanting to understand how certain the load is. That's pretty interesting that they submitted 4 different applications for 4 different sites, but that might be kind of a necessary cost of doing business in order to figure out the best place in California where that load could connect. It's not an easy problem. If they are in communication with the California ISO, that is really the best thing they can be doing right now. I recognize it's not simple.
Thank you, everyone. That's the time we have, and let's join
Thank
with
you.
thanks, Rachel, again.
Thank you, Tina.